Hey guys, Eli here, and today I have something for you that I think you're really going to enjoy and get a lot of value from if your goal is to build your real estate photography company. And that is my talk from our conference that we hosted earlier this month in Miami about building your business and what it takes to get to each of the levels and where real estate photographers easily get stuck. So it's a 38-minute talk. It is full of value, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. And it'll hopefully give you some clarity on what you need to do to get your business to the next level.
So I've said multiple times now that I feel like at this point I don't have a lot of stuff to share with you guys because I've been sharing it for a while, and you can only say stuff so many times. And so when I was preparing this speech, I sat down with the team. I was like, I have no idea what to say, and I know I need to say something. And so I'm glad we put some effort in and came up with something, because I think it's actually going to be a really cool presentation for you guys. We've obviously coached and worked with a lot of people over the last 3 years, which has been a super awesome experience for our team, and we've learned a lot in the process, and we've also seen a lot. And so when I was growing my business, I got stuck at the same points that a lot of you guys get stuck on, and that was really cool to see. And so what I'm going to do in this talk is break down the points that we see people get stuck at in their business, and then ultimately what you need to do to get past those platforms, as we're calling them here. And I know some of this has been said already, but the reason growth is simple is outrageously large at the top is for the same reason Brad and many other people said. It's very important to remember that growth is simple. And what a lot of people do is they try to complicate things, and ultimately what that does is delays growth. So I have this tongue twister here, which is doing doesn't matter, but doing what matters does. And that's something that more than one time has tripped me up, where I felt like as my business grows, I needed to add more. And so you guys can read most of this stuff here, but I want to tell you a funny story that has to do with this one. So there's this joke on the internet that Aaron showed me, and it's basically there's these two people. It's a student and a counselor or someone at an academic, so it's at Harvard, right? And they're walking through the hallway at Harvard, and it's a prospective student, and they catch a glimpse into a classroom, and written on the whiteboard at Harvard Business School, which you'd expect to be pretty prestigious, right, is this equation, right? That's it. It just says revenue minus expenses equals profit. And the joke is that you'd expect more at Harvard, right? You'd expect them to have some like complexity, and the joke deeper in there is that you don't really learn a lot at college. But the point that I'm trying to make is that business is ultimately pretty simple if you keep to the simple stuff and you just do what you need to do. So that's this whole talk, is saying you're at $1,250 a month. What do you need to do to get to the next level? And one thing that I firmly believe that we haven't had a lot of time to talk about so far at the conference is that we have so much good to come in this industry. And I'm not saying that to hype everyone up and get everybody excited, but it's just the last 10 years, this industry has grown so much. There's so much more opportunity, and we're right ahead of what I think is going to be a huge opportunity with branding for agents. So I just encourage you to be completely invested in your business. And these slides, I think, will help you get to the next level. But that's just kind of a big picture thing. I think we have so much more that's in store for us that's going to be amazing. So I have an Alex Hormozy quote there at the end that I think some of you guys could probably finish for me. But the quote is, "A focused fool can accomplish more than a distracted genius." And I think, not calling myself a genius at all, but I think of myself too highly sometimes, and so I get myself into too much stuff. And so what I try to remind myself is that I need to be a focused fool, and that is much better than someone who thinks they can do a lot of stuff at one time, because that's ultimately taken me nowhere in my business. And so I wanted to pass that lesson on to you guys, to make sure that as you grow, you don't let anything go to your head, not in a sense of like some weird form of pride. I just mean you think you can do more than you can, and so you add more to your plate, and you maybe do what you add to your plate successfully, but it's not what's going to take your business to the next level ultimately. So keep it really simple. And one big point that I want to make here is that growth, like you'll see on this chart here, let me go back, is not as linear as this seems. So we have to break it down in this way so we can see the different platforms. But ultimately, there's a lot of stuff that will happen as you're growing your business that will make you feel like you have the worst business in the world. And so I want everybody to close your eyes for a second, and I want you to raise your hand if you've ever felt like your business is on fire and everybody else has a good business. Don't be shy. So now open your eyes and look around. Oh, you guys put your hands down. No. Now look around. So the lesson here is something that I felt and everybody has felt at different times, is you will feel awful about your business. Things will happen that are bad. Like we've talked about, you'll get close to missing payroll. You'll hire the wrong person. You'll make a horrible decision and bring someone on your team that was just not the right fit, and you'll be like, what is wrong with me? Like, how is everybody else growing so fast and doing so well, and why am I not? And if there's one thing you take away from the whole conference, I would hope that it's you are very normal, and if you don't go through those challenges, something is probably going wrong in your business, or you're just not willing to be honest with yourself. And Brad, our pilot friend here, will probably understand what I'm about to say here, but in aviation, there's kind of this saying that the job is 99% boredom and 1% sheer terror. And I feel like business is often the same way, right? Like we most of the time are, I'd say it's 90 and 10 probably realistically, because there's a lot of sheer terror that happens. But just keep that in mind as we go through these numbers and kind of move up the platforms. It doesn't feel this easy. It's not just as simple as climbing a ladder, as the illustration will show. At least it doesn't feel that simple. And I'm not a big believer in, like, I don't have quotes all over my walls, and I just, for whatever reason, it's probably ignorant, don't really live that way. But one thing I really believe that is what you focus on in your mind, what you have as the goal you want to achieve is what you're going to get. And so if you're absent a goal or absent something you're focusing on, you're going to get absence in whatever you're doing, which is like the biggest recipe for disaster in a business, right? If you're just kind of haphazardly approaching things. So I'd encourage you to do a couple things. This is a big one that Alex Hormozy preaches all the time, and you guys probably noticed that just about everything that I say is someone else's recycled content. And I love that, because that's what I'd encourage everybody to do, is learn so much from others that you have nothing original to add, because once you do that and once you buckle down on it, then you will eventually have something original to add. So one thing he says is you need to increase your time horizon. And this is a big problem that we see in the group with people who are just starting, and even people who've grown pretty significantly, is they see everybody else that was like, I started my business, and 6 months later, I was a millionaire, you know? And that happens very rarely. And so I think it's discouraging sometimes, and it puts us into this mindset that, like, if we don't achieve it within 30 minutes, we didn't do it right. And so that is not the case at all. And so, like we've talked about in a ton of different scenarios, don't focus on the 1% of the time. Focus on, the 60% of the time, where it's a grind, where it takes years. It took me and Aaron years before we were able to hire the next couple people, and years before we were able to grow our business. And you guys will be able to do it faster. But just keep that in mind. The longer you can think about this, if you have a 2-year goal or a 3-year goal, that's much more realistic, and that's going to put your mind in the right place, which is consistency matters. You want to be fast, but you also want to be consistent. One thing that Gary Vee says that I heard really early on that really stuck with me is people say patience, right? And then you think, well, okay, I'm just going to wait for stuff to happen. And it's not about waiting. It's about being patient with the big picture that you want to accomplish, but working fast in the micro. So macro patience, micro speed is something that helped me contextualize it, because a lot of young people get really ahead of themselves. Like they're 26 and not worth $10 million, and like, what's going on? Because that's kind of the culture we live in, where you see people achieving crazy things through social media. And so that's a phrase that's really helped me a lot, and if it means something to you, I'd encourage you to remember it. Last thing I want to say, this is the housekeeping part of the presentation, but these steps that I'm about to show you aren't the only thing that you need to do to grow. And if you didn't do them in this order, it doesn't mean you won't get to the next level. It just means it might be a slower process. And so, contrary to what I just said about patience and more on the micro speed side of things, it's really important to do whatever you can as fast as you can. And so that's what this is optimized for, is helping you get there as fast as you can. And the last one there that I'll say is, you guys know our value at this point. One of them is don't sugarcoat it. We see a lot of stuff where we should probably say something to people in the group who are leading themselves wrong. And so there's a couple opportunities here where I'm going to call you guys out to be better in some areas that I think will really help. So my promise to you is not to sugarcoat it in that aspect. So we're going to the ground level for a second. Again, I know you guys are all at different levels, and so part of the challenge for me was, how do I make a presentation that would appeal to everybody, but not just be a bunch of general motivational nonsense, right? So I wanted to get to the specifics. So when you're just starting, I know is anybody here like just starting? Cool. So for you two in the back, this will be a good one. There's not much you have to do at every stage, but one of the most important things you can do when you're starting is, as fast as humanly possible, get through these things. And these can be done in literally a day. Do not drag this out. Get your gear and practice shooting. You don't have to be, the next Ansel Adams before you shoot your first house. Get your gear and practice. Create your Instagram account. Set it up properly. We'll talk more about that in a second. Set up your legal entity, sole prop, LLC, whatever it is, and start the Instagram method process. My team and I go crazy with something specifically that happens in the group, which is we've known you long enough to know your name in the group. We've seen you post enough, and then we see a post 6 months later that says you're about to launch your business in 3 months. You guys have seen that, right? And it's so sad because those people ultimately never go on to build a business really of any kind, and that goes back to the speed thing. It's not that speed is better because you get the result faster, it's that you need to get fast enough to get the results. So if you think about it like an airplane taking off, if it goes 20 miles an hour down the runway, it's not getting off the ground. You gotta achieve a certain speed, and that's kind of the same thing with business for most people. So if your business, you two in the back, you're launched. Your business is alive as of right this second. And at that point, obviously, these mean something kind of. And so I'm going to point them out on some of the slides. At this point, you're super excited. You're looking up. You see the people around you. You're able to get to the next level pretty quickly. Let's see if my clicker's going to... There we go. So you're at platform 1, and this is where some imposter syndrome starts to creep in for a lot of people. You feel awful about what you're doing. I remember I made business cards for the first time, and it was the worst feeling ever opening the box and looking at my business cards because I was like, what am I doing? Like, I'm not starting a business. What is this cringy nonsense that I'm up to? And so that'll creep in here. You got to get rid of that as soon as possible. What you need to do to get to the next level, you need to design an Instagram salesperson. And so what a lot of people do wrong, again, to the frustration of our team, is they get started and they get to it, and then they send us an email. We've already talked about this multiple times, but it says something to the effect of, I've been doing the Instagram method for 4 months, and I don't have any results. And one of the most common things we see is when we ask them how many messages they've sent, they always talk in terms of months when they're not getting anything done. No idea why that is, that's just how it happens. So I asked them how many, and they're like, well, we've sent 30. It's not 4 months, right? That's 30 DMs, that's 1 day. And so that's all they've done. And then we click on their page, and this is the specific one that I'm talking about here. There's one post, their profile photo is awful, their bio tells me nothing about them, they look like a scam company. And so it doesn't matter if you send 2 million DMs, you're probably only gonna get 5 clients out of that if you look like a scam. And so a big thing here that stops people from progressing, you've done a free shoot at this level, you've gotten one done, you just can't get any sort of momentum going, you look like a scam. No one wants to do business with a scam. And we always talk about the Instagram page in this context, that it's your 24/7 virtual salesperson, right? Like, it's out there, it's the best salesperson ever because it takes no time off. But if you don't train it, you don't put the proper clothes on it, and you don't use it properly, it's not gonna sell anything for you. And so take a second at this stage to step back, properly do your Instagram bio, make a nice profile picture, post at least 9 photos, some of you, not all of houses, show them, refer to Tommy and Sophie, Chandler, and a bunch of other people who've taught about that. Make your Instagram good, invest in it, it's your business, and it means a lot. You know, it doesn't make any sense to spend a time to DM 500 people if none are gonna convert. It's much better to spend 2 hours making your account good before you start that process. This is where I'm gonna call some of you guys out, but not probably all of you. Focus on maximizing relationship. This is more a problem for my dudes in the audience. We see it every time. A period makes you look mad at the end of your sentence. Don't do that. Use exclamation points. Go out of the way to make yourself seem more friendly. And honestly, that's a big problem. We look at a lot of people's DMs and I'm like, I can't tell if this guy's mad or not. And so that's just a huge stumbling block that is easily fixed with an exclamation point and an emoji that will change your life if you're not getting any responses. And last thing is to ensure your work is actually good enough. So when we say good enough, we literally mean your work is good enough. We don't mean crappy, and people substitute those two words. I literally mean it's good enough. And this is more of a statement we say for our photographers in the audience who have way too high standards to start with, so we're trying to bring them down. But when people aren't photographers, sometimes they think crappy is good enough. So get someone else's opinion, post your photos in the rep group, make sure that the people you ask, you tell them specifically not to sugarcoat it ahead of time. Because if your photos suck, you're not gonna get called back and your business isn't gonna grow. So you do that, pretty easy process, right? The one thing I glossed over that I absolutely should not have is you gotta do the Instagram method at least 100 times at this stage. You're not gonna get anything going without some sort of consistency or some sort of volume. 3 clicks every time. Okay, so platform 2, you get there. This is one where this guy makes a whole lot of sense for where you're at. You get to this level and you're starting to get clients, right? We're at 3 to 10 clients, 1,250 or so in revenue. This number, not so important because it changes. That's 1 client in Seattle. But this number, more important. So you have 3 to 10 clients. This is when the imposter syndrome can knock you out of the business completely, and where a lot of people start looking back because they're like, this is kind of cool, I'm starting to get somewhere, but I'm feeling a little stupid about it. This is the stage where you don't tell anybody you actually know that you're a real estate photographer. And so if this is the line, you're kind of like back here, somewhat stepping into it, but kind of haphazardly approaching your business. So as simple as this seems, one thing we tell people is that you're now a real estate photographer. This is going to be potentially a big step in your life. So put in the effort of it. Have that mentality that what you have is a real business, because that's like the fastest thing. Is that spelled wrong? Maybe. Anyway, have this idea that your business is a real business, because that if you have that mental block that you're kind of like not sure, you just won't be effective. It's really important to have that part of what you're doing right. At this stage, just the normal stuff you have to do. This one is really important. Find consistency with the Instagram method. It does not matter if you send 500 messages on one day if you never send another message. Super important here to find consistency. It's much better to do 10 messages a day and do it for a year than it is to send 500 messages once. It doesn't build. First of all, it's not consistent enough to actually get any business, but if you can't even do the Instagram method consistently, either yourself or hiring a VA, you're not going to have any of what it takes to do the rest of your business properly, and so it's kind of a big filter at this stage. Launch common add-ons. It's really hard to build a business just shooting photos. It's impossible. You guys have probably seen that video I made where it's the difference between a $65K a year photographer and a $250K. The difference is add-ons, so really focus on this. This is kind of what I shouted out on the last slide, so this is the answer that my dudes usually say. I can do that, and they mean it nicely, and this is the nice way to do that. I would be happy to make that happen, exclamation point. So switch your language to that. It makes a big difference. There's a member who was going to be here today who's not, and I wish he was because I was going to have him stand up, but when he first started working with us, he went through a program we did for a short time called Forward. When he was in his kind of interview initially, I asked him what his biggest problem was with his business. He'd been doing it for about 5 years. He was around this. I mean, it was like $1,500 to $2,000 a month. And he was like, I'm so tired. I can't do this anymore. Like, I have kids. I'm working a full-time job. It's impossible for me to make this happen. I'm so tired. And I had no idea how to approach it. I was like, shoot, that's a problem. Like, the guy was worn out. And so I didn't know how to approach it. And so we just started working with him like we normally do. And since then, he's been able to quit his job. He had a high-paying job. It was like $85K a year, something like that. He quit his job. He's full-time in his business. The guy looks so animated when you talk to him. And so I asked him the other day, it was probably 2 months ago at this point, how much he's working. And he made the joke that he's working twice as hard as he was back when he said he was tired. And he's full of energy. And the lesson there is that, one, this stage very tough because you usually have a full-time job. But the reason you're tired is not because you're working so hard, it's because you don't like what you're doing. Like when you're fired up about something, you don't feel the same about it. You keep going and you keep going. And so if you start to creep into this, that I am tired, just know that you're fighting, you gotta fight through that and get to the next level, and you gotta turn yourself around and go up the next ladder. One thing I mentioned, or I glossed over really at the start that I should have mentioned, is it's really easy to rest on a platform. So if you're at $1,250 a month, you don't have to do anything to stay there. And eventually you'll grow a little bit, right? But the concept with this is rest is easy, climbing platforms hard, but then you can rest on the next platform at any point. And so it's a really good idea to push through, especially at this level, because honestly, one of the hardest times of your business is right here. So platform 3, you're starting to get some traction. This is when people get really excited. So you're at 30 to 50 clients doing about $4,000 a month. Could be more, could be less. Again, market dependent. Common stuff you have to do, so offer all add-ons, have your packages in place. Don't be lazy. I know it's hard to launch video. I know it's hard to do that other stuff. Get at least the common add-ons in place. On this stage, all the add-ons and packages in place. That's going to really take your business to the next level. Because what you'll notice, when you get around this, you start to run out of time in the day, especially if you're charging too low, and so your average order value is like $150. You're shooting all day in a lot of cases, or scheduling or editing. There's a lot of nonsense that happens in this phase. So one of the biggest things you need to do is offer all add-ons and have packages. You need to start focusing more actively on sales and your metrics. So obviously we talked about the metrics we track. Don't wait till you're at 4K to track that. It's really cool if you start from the beginning. You're gonna have a cool chart eventually too. But at this point, absolutely be tracking them. We already talked about that, so I'm gonna skip that. Let's see, outsourcing. Okay, so this is one that Bethany talked about and a lot of people have done. Don't keep doing the Instagram method yourself, especially if you're at $4,000 a month or above. It is a complete waste of your time, and some people, Bethany, would argue that it's a waste of your time at any point, and I would agree. So at least at this point, outsource your Instagram, spend time at brokerage presentations, get yourself in front of realtors, bring coffee, I forget who said that, go meet agents one-on-one for coffee, invite them out to lunch, do the scary stuff, because it's scary now, but it's a lot scarier to get stuck here constantly. You work really hard in this stage, and not a lot happens right if you don't keep pushing it. And obviously, the easiest one of them all, don't edit your own stuff. That's such a waste of time. So you guys have heard this story, but I'm going to tell it because it's really important, and it shows the value of this kind of thing and getting this other stuff off your plate. Aaron and I had finally almost gotten to the 4K number. I remember a couple months, I think a month or two before we hit 4K, I went with my dad. He was having a business meeting with a guy, and he wanted me to meet the guy. So I went with him, and we were getting gas after. And he was like, so Eli, how much are you guys making now? And I really wanted to hit 4K, and so I was like, 4K. And we were making like $2,500 a month, so we weren't quite there yet. And anyway, 2 months later, we hit it. Again, what you have in your mind usually is what you get. I wish I would have said 40K, but anyway. So we get to 4K, and we're getting excited about the business. I thought 4K was so much money at the time. Like, I remember at one point, so my dad had a small steel business, like 20 minutes from our house, and he had like 4 or 5 people that worked there. And I wanted to work there so bad because I could like help him with the business in my mind. And I was like, if he would just pay me $4,000 a month, I would quit Norman & Young. And that's like literally what I would have done. I would have done everything and just quit it and gone all in. And so I hit that. It was a special number to me. I quickly realized that's not a lot. And so at this time, we had been planting the seeds to get some more big clients. So we'd been meeting with this broker. We met with him 2 or 3 times. And the first time I met with him, I told the story yesterday. He seemed really excited to use us. Had a lot of business, like 30 agents under him, and he was going to pay for everything. So it was all through him. And I met with him, and he was like, well, really awesome, love to use you guys. The problem is I'm under a contract with another photographer exclusively for the next 6 months. So I was like, oh, come on. Like, I thought I had him. And so anyway, forgot about him. 6 months later, he calls, and he says, we're done with the contract, and here's all our business. The next month, we hit $10,000. And that was a huge milestone. Like, the same month that guy called, which was 1 month after this, we hit $10,000. And so what that goes to tell you is you got to be planting the seeds out there because you never know what's going to grow your business to the next level. And again, if I thought $4,000 a month was a lot, 10K, I was like, oh my gosh. And this is about the point when Aaron and I were like, all right, this is an actual business. We need to invest in this. We need to, completely dive in. So that'll get you to the next level. At this point, you start getting excited. And that's why the guy is looking up because you're like, all right, this is awesome. All right, so the next platform is 60 to 120 clients, around $12,000 a month. This is a platform where I think it is totally okay to stop if you want. And I believe that more strongly 3 years ago. Now I'm more like you need to scale your business because you never know what's going to happen in your life and you want to have to not have it rely on you. But this is a good platform to stop because it gets pretty hard after this. So at this point, you're at 60 to 120 clients, about $12,000 a month in revenue. So decide if it's right for you to scale. If it's not, enjoy yourself. $12,000 is a lot more than most people make. You're probably making $9,000 after expenses. Just use shooting. You're working pretty hard. You're making decent money, right? $100,000 a year. And so it's a decent place to stop. And again, it's easy to stop on a platform. But if you decide to grow, which you should, it's awesome when you grow. It gets easier when you grow. Here's what you need to do. First thing is be practical with your finances. You're going to feel rich at this phase if you've never made this kind of money before. It feels like an impossible amount of money. You get really comfortable. You start spending stupidly, and you don't realize how quickly it goes. And then on top of that, what a lot of people do is they think they're invincible. And so they're like, I'm going to start hiring. This is amazing. I'm making 80% margin. I can grow my business super easily. And so you seduce yourself into thinking you're a genius. Don't do that. Be respectful to your own finances because you're going to disrespect yourself long term if you don't save up money and you start building good financial habits. So do that. Start saving up money. Prioritize personal growth at this stage. You have a lot of learning to do. It's going to require people to get to the next level, which is a little bit of a hint of what you're going to have to do next. And one thing about people is they're the key to growing your business, but they also will cause you the biggest headache if you don't know how to manage. And if you don't know how to manage, it is 100% your fault. Experience will teach you, but what's better than learning from your own mistakes is if you learn from others, obviously. And so if you can prioritize your personal growth, you'll put yourself way farther ahead than I was, at least. One thing I learned the other day, I was reading Talk Like TED. It's a book to prepare for what I'm doing right here. And one thing they said that was interesting is, when you read a book and you come back or listen to an audiobook or whatever, and you're just like fired up after it, you feel really like pleasurable, right? What they said in the book that I thought was interesting is, obviously if you go do methamphetamine, you get dopamine, right? That's why people do it. But also, if you read a book and you learn something, your brain releases dopamine. And so you can get that's why you get that high after you learn something. And so not only will you learn something here, this gets you motivated. It's an natural drug, right? Reading, learning. And so that's super cool. And I just thought that was the funniest thing because I always come back hype after I listen to an audiobook. Like at 10 o'clock at night, I'm like, what are we going to do next in the business, So obviously educate yourself on people, management. That's part of that personal growth thing. This is the phase where you'll start to have this value. if you don't be careful. I hate my clients because you're getting really busy, and it's not that your clients are bad, it's just that you have too many of them and you don't know how to manage properly. You don't know how to bring people on the team. So this happens a lot, and we know you're at this stage when you start emailing us, when do I fire my client? So if you email when I fire my client when you're at $9,000 a month, the answer from us is going to be you don't, because you need to learn how to deal with those hard clients now. And wanting to fire a client is because you don't have time to deal with a client that's taking extra time. And that means that your systems are not in place. And so what we tell our team now is we don't even fire clients. I mean, if they abuse the team, they're gone in a second. But if they're just a difficult client, it's a great opportunity to see if you can fix it, right? Worst case scenario, they leave anyway. And so I like those. I mean, I don't like them so much when I'm dealing with them, right, or in the moment, but long term I like it because we learn from it and we figure out how to you can make anybody mad at you happy for the most part. And sometimes there's a quote by Grant Cardone where he says, your clients aren't always right, but you don't have to make them wrong. That's exactly how we handle those situations, and just try to keep that in mind. We, under our breath, repeat, I love my clients a lot when those happen, obviously. Last thing on this slide, master the art of letting go. We talked about this multiple times, so I'm not going to stay here too long, but you're not special. Everybody else can do this if you're willing to step back and train them, and having that attitude as soon as possible will help you be a lot more successful. And again, you need people to get you to the next level. So we're on platform number 5. You're at about 200 clients, $12,000 to $25,000 a month in revenue. This is where you stop if you don't get other people involved. Some people will get to 25 by themselves, like in Seattle and other expensive markets, right? But generally, you're going to stop somewhere around 12 to 25 where you just can't handle it anymore. So you have to bring on people in this stage. This is a hard stage if you've never managed before. So we had just hired 2 people on our team. It was me and Aaron. We just hired 2 people, and they were fresh. I hired them at the same time. This is like within the first week or 2 of hiring them. And I had to go do a shoot because it was a video, and none of the other people did video yet. So I was already a little irritated about that. I'm like, I have 3 employees. So I went and did the shoot, and I came back. And on the way back, I was thinking about how much less I was going to make the month that I hired them, because we'd made $18,000 the month before. It was me and Aaron. So that's pretty good, right? You feel good about that. And I was calculating up like a $3,000 salary plus a $3,000 salary if you factor in everything. We didn't pay very much back then. And I was like, well, that's down to 12. And then I was like, well, we outsourced editing, so that's another 3. So I'm like, 12, 11, 10, 9. And then like Aaron, there's another, I don't know, $1,000 at that time. He was severely underpaid. So I'm like, dang, we're down to like $5,000. And last month I made like 12. And so not only had I just done so much work while the team was there, I was like, I'm not going to make any money. So I called my dad and I was like, here's the deal. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fire the team that I just hired 2 weeks before. And I'm going to keep it lean, and I'm going to save up a lot of money, which at the time I was like, I can save $3,000 a month at this rate. I'm just going to work so hard, and I'm going to save $3,000 a month. And I'm like, in 5 years, Dad, I could have like 150, 200 grand saved up. And the funny thing is I wouldn't have that. I would have just blown it anyway, because when you start working hard, you start justifying lobster every night. And anyway, so he was wise enough to, I don't even remember what he said, but he was just like, son, not the answer, right? You got to have someone in your life that tells you that when you're about to step back. And what was happening to me is the past, we kind of mentioned this earlier, the past looked really familiar, and it felt comfortable. I was like, we can make $3,000 a month profit. Like, I can save that after my living expenses. I had a house that I bought for 82 grand at the time. And so I didn't do that. But what really tested it was when I got back to the office, we had just rented our first office, another expense at that point, because Cass, after one employee was at the house, was like, so anyway, we got this office, and I came back, and I told this story yesterday, but I'm going to tell it again because the effect is extremely powerful if you take it the right way. At least it was for me. And the 3 employees, Aaron included, were laughing at the office, and they were having a great time, and they weren't learning, and they weren't getting us clients, and they weren't doing anything else, and I was mad about it. Like I said yesterday, I was like, what are these people doing? And so all that came at the same time, and without that person telling me, don't do that, without my dad saying that to me, I would have stopped. And so what I'm hoping is that you guys hear me say this and don't stop when you get to that point, because you never know who it's going to be that tells you that. For me, I was lucky enough to have a dad that did. I don't know about you guys, so I'm hoping to be that person where it's like, don't do that. If you get to that level and you're thinking about looking back, don't do it. This is one of the hardest, I keep saying these are the hardest things you'll get to, but this one, you can see ladder plus rope, hard, right? And so what you need to do here at this point, and what I didn't know, is the story I illustrated earlier with Sheryl Sandberg, right, where she told her team that working with your team is the most important thing you can do. That's the new work that you have. I thought that I was supposed to shoot, and that Aaron was supposed to shoot, and then our 2 other employees were supposed to shoot, and it was supposed to be harmony and a duplication of me 4 times, right, or whatever that means. And what I didn't know is that my job had to switch from the star player on the team to the coach, right? And usually the players on a good team are obviously better than the coach. I mean, if we're talking like 5-year-olds playing basketball, the coach will stomp them down. But if we're talking like major leagues, right, the coach, he can't play in the NFL, but he knows how to coach a team. That's his skill set. And so that's what was a hard transition for me, is I didn't know that. I thought that I was just supposed to keep in my lane, and then if they bothered me, my business wasn't doing well. And now I realize that if I do work at this point, like work tactically, it's probably not a good use of time, and I'm probably not prioritizing what I should be. And so if you remember something from this, star player to strategic coach is what you need to focus on, and spending time with your employees is your new job. Obviously, at this point, you need to create systems to back that up. So you're going to need payroll, you're going to need tracking if they are paid hourly and all that stuff. And another thing here that I probably should have put more effort in, but we talked about it in the speech that Aaron gave, you have to manage consistently, and you have to think of yourself as a manager and put in the time to learn how to be a good manager, because you'll get stuck if you don't, because people won't like you, you'll create bad culture, you'll have so many fires you don't know what to do with it. And so put that in place. Jared, when he first took over Norman & Young, he called me, I don't know, like 2 weeks. I don't know, how long was 2 weeks? 1 week maybe a day, honestly, at Norman & Young at the time. And he was like, I think I'm going to put us out of business. And he had been a photographer for a year at that point, too, not even long. And he called me, and I don't remember if I laughed, but I laugh about it now, because I'm like, that's what it feels like, and that's what a lot of people aren't used to. When it's just you shooting, you're like, you don't have that many mad clients. 1 out of 10 is mad. You're pretty good at your job. You can handle it. You show up on time because it's your business. And then what you start having happen is, you were a photographer and you had great reviews. Now you're managing a team. And it's not that your team is failing you. It's just that you have 10 times as many clients. Now you have 10 mad clients. And guess whose job it was to manage those mad clients? It was Jared. And 2 months before that, the day before that, he had all these happy clients except for this one lady that just doesn't like him. And it was amazing. And so he called me. He was like, we're going to put us out of business. And I was like, I've thought that for the last 3 years, my friend. Like, keeps growing. And so just be ready for that. You have all these fires that happen. It doesn't mean your business is going bad. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it's an indication that you need to do better. But if it's just normal stuff, if an agent's super mad because the photographer forgot the guest bathroom, you just got to take a step back and realize that in the scheme of things, unimportant. Your team messed it up. You don't need to redesign your entire training program. You just need to encourage that person to be more thoughtful and move on and put it behind you. It's easy to get caught up in you just become a ball of stress, really. That's what happens to you if you don't anticipate it, and it's awful, and you feel like everything's bad, and then you start making bad decisions. And so make sure that you have some way or something you do where you step away from the business, and you can get re-excited about it, see the bigger picture, and don't just get burned out in the weeds with all the fires. So platform 6, this one's got a joke in there that I hope you guys laugh at, and I'll get there in a second. But when you get to this stage, this is the last stage we're going to talk about today, which is about $50,000 a month in revenue. And the reason I picked this stage is because I can't teach you in real estate media how to make $250,000 a month, which is, I think, where next people get stuck. It kind of seems to be that level, and I've never gotten there. So if you have, please come educate me. But this is where we're going to stop for today. And there's some important things you need to do at this stage if you want to enjoy your business. The thing about the $50,000 a month stage, this is probably the most profitable you'll be until you really get to the next threshold. So when we were doing about 50 grand a month in revenue, I was making somewhere around $20,000 to $25,000 a month take home, and that feels pretty good. That's some good revenue to be at. And so this is something I believe that everybody in here can get to. You don't have to be a super strong business talent to get to 50K a month. I read something the other day that kind of irritated me actually when I read it, but if you go to the Small Business Administration's website, you look up the definition of a small business, there's loose other definitions, but generally it's a business that makes under $40 million a year is a small business. So I was mad when I read that, obviously, because I was like, all right, here I am. Like, and what it goes to show you is that this is a fly in the world of business, and it's just not that hard to get here. The thing that it takes to get here is a willingness to keep doing the stuff that you're unfamiliar with. That's all it is. It's nothing hard. It's not complicated. You feel really good making 20 to 25K a month take home. You're working pretty hard, but you're making good money. You can actually save up real money if you get there, and everybody, again, can get there. So maximize revenue. Define your growth plan. So you have a decision to make somewhere around this point. Again, depends on every market, but you can scale to other markets. That's usually where it gets hard if you're not in a really expensive area you start to run out of agents that like you. And so you have to think about expanding into another city or another state or something completely different, right? So we took the route of teaching other people how to do this. That's why I'm standing here, because our scaling route was completely different. It was by starting an education business. And this is where it's important to know yourself. I get so bored operating things. That's not what I like to do. I don't like to do the same thing every day. Some people are really good at that. Like Jared is really good at refining what we do. I get so bored. And so I knew for me, my scaling path was to do something different in the same industry that leveraged what I already know, right? Because if I restarted, that would be kind of a waste. I had to build off of what I already knew. And so this is where you have to be real with yourself and say, what do I want? Like, what do I actually want to do? You've obviously proven that you can get some stuff done. I mean, that's an incredible milestone. Despite it being tiny compared to the definition of a small business, that's amazing to get to 50 grand a month. I mean, that's the average American family's yearly income in a month in your business. And you're providing jobs at this point. You're doing a lot of cool stuff. And so you got to pat yourself on the back. And actually, before I talk about that, don't get stupid at this stage. This is when you can get your monthly expenses to $18,000 a month and feel like an idiot. I know that because I've done that. So don't do that. Save the money, invest in real estate, invest in whatever you're comfortable with, maximize your cash flow. But what a lot of people, so this guy is like, do you know the funniest thing about this presentation is these characters, I didn't put them there. They were already like in the perfect area to explain what I wanted to explain, which is hilarious. But anyway, what a lot of people think, well, raise your hand if your company makes less than 50 grand a month. A month, yeah. Okay, so most people, right? So if you're under 50 grand a month, what you probably think this guy is doing is surveying his kingdom, right? So he's on top of the world, he's making a lot. And the joke here for anybody that's got there is that, there he is, right? I'm not a comedian, but I really like that one. It was my personal, came up with that myself, you know? Anyway, so the joke is that obviously he's looking at the world that he now knows that business is and seeing how small and insignificant he is, and that is a really good feeling if you use it properly. And so at this point, you have the leverage. You can do whatever you want. You can chill and enjoy it, or you can start thinking about the next level for you. And what you'll find is that your priorities will change when you grow your business. You know, at this point, everybody likes to make money, right? And I'm not someone who's made that much money. Again, a small fly in the world, but your priorities start to change. Now I'm like, I was telling Cassidy the other day, I was like, my goal, if I had 1,000 people on my team, I would be so excited about that. And so you have to figure out what you want to do and what's super exciting to you and start working towards that. Because if you can make it here, you can make it here. And if you can make it here, you can make it here. And so that all being said, I want to give a massive shout out to my team for making this happen. And like I talked about earlier, you can't do anything if you're not willing to hire and grow your team. And this conference and anything else we've done would not be possible without the team. So if you guys wouldn't mind, give my team a huge round of applause.